Lopez. This is an honor for me because I feel like this is something that I have been wanting to do. More so with you, given what we've been through, the things that I think I myself kind of, just in my development, even being a part of what's been going on here. I've felt honored since I've been here to be a part of the amazing women who have brought me in warmingly and just been nothing but encouraging for me in what I've been pursuing, I guess, art-wise, but even just giving me the courage to know that I still have a place, that there is the potential to be able to do this. Now I feel it like my job to spotlight you guys because, I don't know, I've always been interested. I like knowing what people are doing. I like being able to see where others are going, the perspective in their life, and where they come from. So thank you for being here. I appreciate this. I know it's like the first time. She actually helped me put most of this stuff together. She helped with a lot of this. She has an amazing background in, what is it, theater, art, or theater?
Theater and fine art, yes.
It's awesome, see? And I was just trying to throw shit together. It's all right. This is just the beginning, though. So whatever's happening now, it's just a start. And, you know, I've got great people here helping me out. So thank you again for being here. I know this is odd, and I don't want to just jump into the questions. I feel like, again, like James Lipton usually when he invites the people here, there's great applause, and then he just jumps in fucking questions. I would like to just jump into the questions, but going into it, I guess, I want to be introduced to the world of Sioux Falls before the Renaissance, as I would call it, I guess, in regards to, you know, the women's movement that set the tone for all of the female artists that have decided to, not decided, but that have been represented now more so than ever. If you would be able to briefly paint that picture for me, what it was like, you know, living here from when you remember first getting into and doing and presenting your artwork in the community to, you know, where we're at today.
I first, as an adult, I first really started getting into art back in the early 90s with the idea that I would go to school for art and then move away in order to sell my art. There really wasn't that much of an art community. There was artists that would get together and do stuff, but there wasn't the art community as we know it today. The pavilion had just opened. I don't even remember when I opened. I think it was in the 90s. Yeah. And there was some discussion at that time of accessibility in art with lower income people and having all people in Sioux Falls be able to access the arts. And that's because public money went to help fund the Washington Pavilion. The art community really got focused when Black Sheep Coffee had an art exhibit by an artist. His name is Eobi, and he was from Ethiopia, and he was a very good artist. Well, still is. He had his paintings up in the Black Sheep Coffee, and Bill really really enjoyed one of the paintings, and so Yop said that he would put it on the side of the building for him, and he did.
Wow.
And it's this beautiful piece that was quickly complained about to the city, and the city told Black Sheep that they had to paint it over, and there was a few artists that heard about that and went to the city council meeting and said, what?
Right.
This is not advertisement, this is art, there's a difference, it's a mural, it's not a billboard.
The main complaint over it was that it was based off the advertisement more so than...
Yeah, there's very tight ordinances in the Sioux Falls area about what you can have up as far as size of advertisement or like signage,
Right.
Based on how large the business is, based on the location of the business. For example, one place I know of, it's on a corner, but it can only have one sign.
Right.
On the front of the street, can't have a side,
Right. Right.
So, the complaint was that people thought that that was advertising, and so there was a few artists that got together and explained very strongly that there's a difference between advertising and art, and that kind of started the whole communication with letters to the editor and stuff about what is public art, and the fact that we should have more public art in Sioux Falls, which eventually led to the sculpture walk happening.
So there was no sculpture walk prior to this.
Right, now we have the sculpture walk, we have places such as the pinning studios, where people can go and create art, or take art classes.
Right.
We have places like Exposure Gallery. There's more art galleries in Sioux Falls now than there has been. There's more studio space in Sioux Falls now than there was when I was in college in the mid-90s.
Wow.
There's also JAM, which is like Habitat for Humanity for artists, Restore Creative Reuse Center, that helps get art supplies into the hands of artists so that they can create beautiful things.
Right.
Practically every coffee house in town has local art inside of it. Even like Vishnu Bunny has the art gallery inside there. There's a real vibrancy that's come from having that start of the conversation of what is community art.
Right.
So
awesome.
And it's great to have been
watching see that as it grew, as it's been progressing in there. Interesting. Well, that is a great perspective from that then, because I, again, coming from the outside in, not having been able to participate in that, it's actually kind of amazing to know that, that JAM was, 3-4 years ago, not really even a thing,
It was in a closet. Yeah.
And that's, to me, that's amazing because, coming from having First Fridays out when I first saw them as a thing in Vegas, it was a local artist community. It was a community-based art association, flea market of artistry.
Mm-hmm.
Even with the food trucks, it almost seemed.
Yeah. The food trucks in town are just amazing.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago where there was a gentleman that had a food cart just selling hot dogs and was constantly running up against City Hall because of it, wanting to get, getting the license and all of this stuff and everything, just beating his head against the wall, and they would let him sell hot dogs out of his thing if he was up on North Main, but not down in the business district or downtown. And now we've got food trucks on practically every corner on a Friday and Saturday night this summer, which is wonderful to see. It's the small business explosion that has come from realizing that things like food trucks and local art and local music are so important to the vibrancy of a city and so important to attracting not only the younger generation to come when they get out of college. This is, a place to come to live, to work, but also attracts businesses that are trying to attract those creative people. So it's a really good thing for the city.
Well, that is a well-painted picture, I would say. Probably one of the best. Though that was the first one that I've had in depth like that. I appreciate that. I figure we'll just jump in then. Where were you born?
Okay. I was born in Sioux Falls.
You are a native to Sioux Falls, born and raised.
No, I was born in Sioux Falls. I was raised in Newton.
Okay. Is there
like 90 miles south of me.
Gotcha. And what would you say the difference was? I mean, Sioux Falls, between Sioux Falls and Yankton, what is the
Yankton is a much smaller community. As I was growing up in Yankton, it was very much you kind of needed to fit in the box. It was very much if you were a boy, you were expected to act like this. If you were a girl, you were expected to act like this. If you were middle class, you were expected to act like this. If you were lower class, you were expected to act like that. If you were, it was just really a ticky-tacky community.
Like that, seeing you used that word before, and that's
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, and so it was very difficult growing up in Yankton. Don't get me wrong, my family was wonderful.
Yeah.
But being one that doesn't quite fit into a box, it was very difficult growing up in Yankton, and I got out of Yankton as soon as I could.
Yeah.
Tried my darndest to stay out of Yankton as much as I could.
When you say fit into a box, considering, I guess, with the whole open door that we have now in regards to self-identification, the ideas of, what we choose to identify ourselves as, how we identify ourselves, would you say that these these things that we were meant to follow, right? These ideas that we were meant to be, or these boxes we were meant to fit in. Would you say that they varied from Yankton to Sioux Falls?
I think that what is different between Yankton and Sioux Falls is that there's enough diversity in Sioux Falls that it allows one to be okay with not fitting in the box.
Right.
And not feeling like one is set apart because they don't fit in the box from others. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. So, born in Sioux Falls, raised in Yankton. At what point did you find yourself back in Sioux Falls?
1990 when I got out of the service.
That's right. Conversation we had prior to this. You were in the Army.
Yes.
And you served for how long?
About 8 years. I did a couple years reserve, a couple years inactive, and then the rest of it was regular.
Awesome. Now, this was, you said 1990.
1990.
We had talked previously about this, and there was a comment that you had made that there was a difference having been a woman in the armed forces at about this time. I remember hearing some of the difficulties that some women were having being a part of the armed forces. Your account of it and, you know, your interaction, what was it like?
I found that the two posts that I was stationed at when I was over in Europe, I discovered that the less females that I was stationed with, the more equal my treatment was. The first unit I showed up in over there, the military made a mistake and sent me to a combat bridging unit. And so I was one of two females in my unit. They didn't know what to do with me. Just put me to work. I'm trained to do this and that. And so they did, and that worked out really well. When our battalion commander went on leave for the holidays, his replacement got rid of all of the females in their unit.
Yeah.
And so there was me, there was a lieutenant in our unit, and then there was 4 other women in the Signal unit in the battalion.
Right.
That he just transferred out. Because his views were different than the battalion commander's views. And so I got transferred to a unit that had several women in it.
Right.
That were, a lot of them were construction equipment operators, heavy construction equipment operators, crane operators, what have you.
Yeah.
And all of them were in pack or in supply or working in an office someplace instead of out in the field doing their job like they were supposed to be, or like they were trained to do.
Right.
And that's when I started having problems with the sergeant, who was very much sexist. And I got out about a year and a half later.
So there was already a bias set because, one, you were a woman, and clearly these gentlemen didn't know, or these guys didn't understand how to react or how to interact.
Right. Yeah, they were old school. They believed that a woman's place was in the office, not driving a truck.
Right.
And so, yeah.
And then, so after your term, after your service, where did you find yourself? Where did you were in Europe at this time. When did you find yourself back in the States?
That would have been spring of 90, early spring of 90. I found myself back in the States. And I actually ended up in Yankton for a little bit, and then got a job handling eggs. There's an egg factory down there. Yeah, I know. And then met a couple people there at the factory. We came up here to look for work, and I ended up jumping on the Carnival and working my way through Canada for the summer. Wow. Which was fabulous.
I imagine the Canadians are pretty well off. They know how to live.
They are. Canada's a really nice country.
I've heard nothing but good things about that place. That's amazing. Well, how far back are you able to trace your family history that you know of?
The family that I grew up in, or my adopted family?
We'll start with the family you were born in, and then your adopted family.
Okay. So my birth family, not very far.
No. Okay. No, it's okay. That's.
The family I grew up in, my grandparent was Andrew. His father was Peter. And if I remember correctly, they're the ones that came over from Denmark on my mom's side. My grandmother, I think it was her parents that came over from Czechoslovakia. So.
Shit. Yeah. That's kind of cool. I don't know much about the Czech Republic or the
Kolache.
Yeah, I know that there's a lot of history there.
Really good food.
And that too, right? God, everybody drinks over there too. It's like the best place to go to.
Yeah, it's one of the things I liked about living in Germany. It was really close.
It's weird. And that's probably another question to ask, really. Knowing that you've been overseas, knowing that you've been to other countries, including Europe. I mean, Europe being probably one of the more prominent, has vast history in itself. The differences in which they live versus the way we see ourselves here in America, I hear, because, I mean, myself, I've never been overseas, but I've known people who have traveled, and they say that these things are just vastly different. Considerations, the mindset even. What is one of the few bigger points that you've noticed that you know that are far different from the way we live here in America?
Recycling is huge in Germany.
Wow.
Comparatively,
sure.
It's a smaller country. They don't have as much space for landfills like we do here.
Right.
So practically everything that can be recycled is recycled. I remember taking recycling down, and every once in a while on the street corner you would just there was an area where you would go, and there would be like enclosed bins
Right.
that you would deposit your bottles, glass, fabric,
Yeah.
plastics,
Yeah.
metal, tin, aluminum, and there was like, I don't even remember how many, but it was like 12 or 14 different categories of stuff.
Wow.
That, yeah, I just remember going, oh my gosh, it's a lot,
So their system was fairly developed. I mean,
yeah,
they had
really
it broken down.
Really organized, yeah. A lot of things over there were very organized.
Yeah.
The transit system was amazing. How smoothly it ran, and how on time it was.
Right.
Yeah. It was also fascinating. Over here, I remember going to Boston with my 6th grade class as a class trip, and just wow, that's a building that the North Church has been there for 250 years or what have you, and going to Germany, and the house I was living in was over 300 years old.
Wow.
Because
Jeez.
they've been around a lot longer than we have.
I'd say that's
as far as
almost older than the United States.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, because Karlsruhe was built.
Yeah.
So much longer before the United States was.
Right.
Karlsruhe was already there.
Yeah.
So a 200-year-old house wasn't unusual.
No. 200-year-old house, not unusual. No need for renovation in those ones, huh? Jeez. They're made out of what? Stone.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, a lot of stonework.
Interesting. Makes you wonder why we went from stone to ticky-tacky houses.
Right. I know when I was traveling through Canada, the main difference that I noticed was in the people and how they treated each other.
Yeah.
It was much more cordial. It was much more polite, much more friendly, much more warm than Americans treat each other. And then when I traveled to El Salvador, the people were as little as they had, because it's a very poor country. They were very happy. Very caring for each other, and just had a lot of fun down there.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. What was your mother's name?
Which one?
Both. We'll start with the birth mother, and then Jean. Jean what?
Rather not say.
Okay, no, it's fine. Jean.
Jean.
Okay.
And then my mom that raised me, her name is Lucy.
Lucy. Named after it's a favorite restaurant I used to go to in Vegas, Lucille. Barbecue restaurant. That'll be interesting to remember. Or Lucille as the bat that's known in The Walking Dead. For those out there who are Walking Dead fans. Lucille. It's a beautiful name. Beautiful name. Do you know her profession? Do you know either of their professions at the time?
Not really. My mom, when I was growing up, before her and my dad got married, she was a secretary. She had gone to secretarial school because that's what girls did.
There was a school for that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I learned how to become a secretary, yes. And she had done that, so she was a secretary.
Yeah.
And then I remember, as I was growing up, she was working at Grimmy Sea down in Yankton, which was a nursery. And they put out this seed catalog every year.
Yeah.
So she would work in the office, taking orders and stuff. And she would do that seasonally.
Yeah.
Because, women weren't supposed to have real jobs.
I saw one of the women I follow. She was posting on her Instagram a few of the advertisements that they used to have for women beauty products. One was a corset for women who were pregnant. And it blew me away, the concept of these things and the way that they used, the pregnancy as a sore sight, or like a, not a disease but a misfortune of some sort, to have this bulging stomach. And here, get a corset that'll help push it into your gut and your back and whatnot. The mentality that these were actually sold, but then most of them were made by men. So it's crazy to hear that there's, here we have...
Oh, a lot of uncomfortable things that are made for women were designed by men. I mean, look at stilettos.
Right.
Can't run away.
No. That'd be interesting if that was clearly designed for them.
Yeah.
But we still see them being used even now. We still see them as a sign of beauty. And I guess my curiosity to that is, why is that? Why is it that it's still, even though we know that that we have these things that aren't necessarily best, or the best things for women in their beauty?
Part of it is the messages that we are sold by the beauty industry.
Right.
That says you have to look a certain way, or act a certain way, or buy this, or wear this, or have this kind of shoe, or this kind of underwear, or what have you, in order to be, this kind of makeup, in order to be beautiful for your man.
Right.
Because there's nothing more important in the world than pleasing your man. Like there's some kind of ownership there, and that's
an undertone of,
yeah, or how you're their woman and you need to look nice for them,
right?
The sexualization of women starts at such a young age, and it's just embedded into practically everything. I mean, look at Barbie dolls, for God's sakes.
And they're still being made.
Yeah, I know, but it's okay now because we dress them up as scientists or astronauts or firefighters or what have you, and it's like still,
Almost as in a sense that there's a belief that because we present Barbie in a fashion, in a attire that's an attainable job or a real job, even though we still don't see women like that even in those fields, that the facade is still there, that, oh, well, we still have a chance to be able to be what we want to be if we wanted to be that, when it's still just as hard nowadays as it was back then in, 40s, 50s, 60s, maybe even further, for women to get jobs that are in high status.
Yeah.
Going into that, your father, do you remember their names? I'm sure you remember their names, but both.
My dad is Maynard.
Maynard.
And I don't know who my father is. I'm going to first say.
Gotcha. Do you know Maynard's profession? Do you remember his profession?
Yeah, he was a mail carrier.
Okay. Was that, that was what he did? That was his career job, I guess, in a sense.
Right.
Back, that would be the career job.
Yep.
Huh. And how long did he do that for?
Until we wouldn't let him do it anymore. He had a heart attack and then retired a year or two after that, I think. He's when he finally retired.
So was it work related?
No, it was just genetics. And the South Dakota meat and potato farmer's diet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We could get all day in diet. And siblings. How many siblings?
My brother John.
Okay. Just one?
Yeah.
Birth side.
No. My birth side, I have 4 sisters.
Oh, wow. You're
And then,
one of 5 kids.
Yes.
All girls.
All girls.
How did your dad take that?
He didn't,
No.
Yeah.
I ask because I know that is the mentality of a man always wanting to pass on his name, given that that was.
Oh, no, that was on my birth side. The family that I grew up with.
Yes.
My adoptive side was me and my brother.
Gotcha.
So.
Your birth side. I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had your brother. He was younger or older?
He was 2 years younger than I was.
Yeah. And that was.
Or I guess he still is 2 years younger than me.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Unless time travel's real. I don't know. We'll get there. What was the family dynamic like?
Family dynamic? I haven't really thought about it, really. It was, I felt that growing up, even though he was a couple years younger than me, that he had more freedoms than I did.
Yeah.
Because he was a boy and I was a girl.
Right.
He was encouraged to get a job. To in the papers, like when he was like 10, 11. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was very, well, at that time, growing up, all kids were active because you just got kicked out of the house, every night, go play after supper, when it gets dark, come home type of thing. So the neighborhood kids would just run and play all the time.
What time did you guys normally have supper? When
6 o'clock.
Okay. Wow.
It's like every night, 6 o'clock.
Yeah. Almost on cue.
It was, It was very much on cue. Yeah.
Sure.
It was very unusual for it to be early or late.
Yeah.
Yeah. Breakfast was at 8, lunch was at noon, supper was at 6. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
And then it was in a time where going outside was not an issue. There wasn't a problem going outside, playing down, you know, down the road, down the street.
Right. Yeah, we'd be running all over the neighborhood.
And I guess then, you know, well, did you ever have or see any of those issues that, you know, we hear about now, where it's, you know, you have child abductions, you know, all of that? There was none of that. And I take it you lived in a time where people's doors were normally unlocked.
Right.
Where there was no worry of security.
Yeah, not as much as there is now yet.
How many of your neighbors did you know?
There was a couple down on the corner house on our block that I didn't know very well.
Right.
But the rest of them I knew. And not just on my block, but across the street on the block, on the other side of the block, across the street on the block, on the other block to the north, 3 blocks down to the north, because that was the way you would walk to get to the pool, the park that had the pool in it.
So there was a pretty good connection between the families, the kids, and the surrounding neighborhood.
Right, and the school that I went to for grade school was 2 blocks over from our house.
Yeah.
Well, 2.5 blocks. Yeah, I go half a block over and then 2 blocks down.
Right.
So the school was 2.5 blocks down. So I knew practically everybody along that way.
Right.
We bordered a college. So there was always the college kids that you didn't know, because they would come and go every year, different ones and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, it was just, you know, and I was walking to school and back by myself in kindergarten.
Man.
Yeah, I think my mom took me, you know, walking to school and back a few times to make sure I knew how to get there and back, and that was about it. Yeah.
And it's interesting. What would you consider the dynamic change that happened that made it to where it has now become a thing where it is not that prevalent for somebody in the neighborhood to know their neighbor, let alone their next door neighbor?
Right. Wow.
Kid, we're gonna get deep here.
Yeah, I just,
I know it's a very broad question, but
yeah,
I guess in any essence,
there's a lot of part of it is that I feel that people are very much wrapped up in themselves.
Okay, yeah.
And what they're doing.
Right.
So they're not as likely to be concerned about what other people are doing.
Right.
Or who other people are, because they're just too focused on their thing.
Right.
As part of it. The other part of it is that we have become a fairly transient community. Just in general. people move in and out a lot, even in neighborhoods that have a higher percentage of home ownership.
Right.
There's still rental units there. People move in and out, even if they, stay 4 or 5 years.
Right.
You might not know your neighbors because when you first moved in, they're just like, oh, well, they're just going to be here for a year. Why bother getting to know them? So they don't ever get to know you.
Right.
Right. We're more inside now than we have been in the past.
Yeah.
Kids don't go out and play anymore. I remember when my kids were in school, that's kind of how we got to know other people.
Right.
Was they would make friends, and then because I'm one of those parents, I know who my kids' friends' parents are.
Right. Right, the whole
So,
sleepovers and whatnot, you get to know that.
You check them out before you send them for a sleepover. Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, so, but we don't send our kids out to play anymore like we used to.
Right.
In general.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
So there isn't that opportunity to get to know your neighbors because Sally came over and
Would you say that a lot of the connections you had, a lot of the reason why your family, or at least you were known and knew most of your neighbors, was because of the connections of the children which you were playing with?
Oh, yeah.
Safe to say the connections were by the children.
That was part of it. My folks also came from farming backgrounds.
Okay.
And living on the farm in a rural community, you knew who your neighbors were.
Right.
Because that's who you would see at the coffee shop. That's who you would see at the grocery store. That's who you would trade eggs and milk with, or what have you.
Yeah.
So my parents grew up in an era where it was a common thing to develop those relationships with your neighbors. So as they moved into town after they got married, they joined the Elks Lodge, the Moose Lodge, the VFW, whatever, the church, and worked on making those relationships with the neighbors. I think one of the reasons why my parents sold the house that I grew up in when they did was because they didn't know any of the neighbors anymore. The families that had been there for a generation had retired and downsized and moved, to Arizona, what have you.
Yeah.
And so the neighborhood community is not what it once was.
Right.
It's not that tight community anymore.
Not as a deep
So
cohesion.
it was easier for my parents to sell the house and downsize when they did. So going back now, there's only one person on that block that I would know.
Wow.
So.
Man. What was the most significant impact of your childhood, and how old were you when it happened? That you can recall.
I didn't really realize it until years and years later. At least not the significance of it. But I very distinctly remember one summer, like all summer long, I could not figure out why my mom would yell at me. We were outside playing with the neighbor kids, running up and down the alley, what have you. My mom would keep yelling at me to put my shirt on. And I could not figure out why I couldn't run around without my shirt on like all the other boys do.
Right.
I just knew that I'd get in trouble running around without my shirt on. And then that also tied in with really, really hating Barbie dolls and getting them for Christmas and birthdays,
right,
what have you, and then trying to steal my brother's toys from so I could go play trucks in the yard,
right,
that kind of stuff. Wanting to play football. So I think that would be like the most significant, even though I didn't realize it until years later.
right. And then I know we've talked about that before, and you know we have that conversation and that your self-identification, the way you identify yourself, coming up as a kid, we used to call those tomboys.
Yeah.
You know, girls who played around with the guys who liked guy things.
Very much a tomboy.
You know, and to me, I've always looked at that as just being a way to dispel the idea that girls can play with guy things, or a girl who isn't following the status quo of what a girl should be doing. She's a tomboy. She wants to play with the guys. Because and vice versa, you've got guys who he wants to play with the girls, and he wants to do all these things. There was right, sissy boy. Like there were terms for those things. Didn't seem as derogatory when it was the girl playing with the guys as it did with the guy playing with the girl things. Do you find yourself, I mean even now, do you find yourself maybe more understanding of how you identify yourself? I mean, I know that they say that there's a plethora of genders out there and a mass of different genders, though there are only two reproductive organs at which you can really utilize.
Right.
Would we consider those based off of gender? Would we use those as the foundation of gender, or is it really, reproduction is reproduction, but how I...
Gender is in the brain.
Okay.
So... Sex is in the organs, gender is in the brain.
Gotcha.
And how you feel yourself to be as far as where you fit on that spectrum.
Right.
So.
Okay.
And I'm still trying to piece that together.
Yeah.
And part of it is that I'm kind of one to not really care what other people think.
That's great
So,
quality.
yeah.
That's amazing quality to have.
So, I'm not trying to be something for someone else.
Right.
But as far as myself, I'm still trying to decipher if, and not to get me wrong, these I'm very comfortable in my skin.
Right.
As unmistakably female, I don't know if, because of some of the ways that I feel about things, I'm still not sure 100% if I'm transgender or if I have more of gender equality issues because of things that I wasn't allowed to do growing up because I was female.
Right.
That I would much more have preferred to do than the Barbies.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And the things that I was constantly told, well, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. And having that repeated as often as it was, really affected my confidence in myself and my self-worth as I got older.
Right.
So I'm still trying to figure that piece out.
Gotcha.
So I kind of like to say that I'm a gay man trapped in a woman's body.
Interesting. I think I've heard that one before.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Well, I appreciate you for sharing that one, because I know that being, at least in this day and age, it's still a, I don't want to say touchy subject, but it's still a very taboo subject in some areas. You know, myself being from the West Coast, that was something that was very open for most people.
Right.
Going to the East Coast, it became something that, you know, it was already known. There was terms that people used, derogatory terms used in the sense, but it wasn't, in a sense, you don't want to say it was term of endearment, but in a sense you have a lot of things where it was already talked about beforehand. So there were already words that were about, you know, different people who identified them different ways.
And as I was growing up, I didn't know any of those words because I was yanked it.
Right.
People didn't talk about that.
And that's the thing that I'm noticing, right? So here we find ourselves in the Midwest where you have both coasts that have already an understanding and people who have decided to break out of these shells of theirs and self-identify them in ways that would go against what we see them as. You move to the place of Midwest and it's almost like the idea of like the bubble or the dome that's been placed around some society is right here.
When I first started becoming involved in the LGBT community in Sioux Falls, it took me almost 3 months to find the gay bar.
Wow.
Because I did not understand that the name of the gay bar was actually the address of the gay bar.
Right.
So I kept driving around looking for a sign that 332 Club, you know.
Right.
It was just a door and an address, and that was it. There was nothing outside that suggested this was even a bar. Part of the issue with that also was that it opened so late in the evening that if you went there, it was locked. There was, so it seemed like it was a closed business.
Right. Right.
Because all you could see in was like it was the door, and then there was another door.
Right.
That was it. As things progressed, when I started going to college, there was one of the other students on campus told me about kind of a support group coffee type of thing here in town. So I went to that. It was Sunday night. And it come to find out that it was actually the fellowship after the church, the GLBT church in Sioux Falls.
Right.
Which had started a couple years before that. So it started about the same time that I was getting to South Dakota from being in the military. After I found that and entered that community, I also joined the Swim for Gay and Lesbian Coalition. The mid-90s, there was a court case in Hawaii on gay marriage, and one of the legislators here in South Dakota got wind of it and decided that we better nip this in the bud and submitted legislation to make marriage in South Dakota between only a man and a woman. And a gentleman out in Rapid City, Barry, stood up at a legislative coffee and raised Cain, and within a week there was 20 of us in here testifying at a committee hearing to try to stop that bill. We stopped it the first year. We were unable to stop it the second year.
Yeah.
But out of that came Faces of South Dakota, which was Free Americans Creating Equal Space. Couldn't even call it
right
a gay organization. It was Free Americans Creating Equal Space.
Yeah.
The Sioux Gay and Lesbian Coalition, we tried having highway cleanup, and the state just wanted to put SEGLC on the sign that said this area is being cleaned up by.
Right.
With the comment that if we put the whole name on there, there was too many letters. Yeah, we finally pointed out that there was other signs in the vicinity of other roads that were being cleaned up that had more letters than we did, and so they put it on there, and then when the sign was vandalized, it was not replaced. So, at that time, it was shortly after that time that first GLBT community center here in Sioux Falls, and that was over at 8th and Railroad. And I was one of the volunteers that ran that office because at the time I was just raising kids and going to college and unemployed and stuff. So
yeah.
I did that. And then just did a lot of lobbying, got involved in lobbying for GLBT rights and such here in South Dakota.
Man, you've had quite the wow. And what would you say has been the impact thus far?
There's more openness. I mean, there's still some families that are just like,
yeah.
But there's more openness and there's more visibility as far as we have. The first Pride that we had a Pride picnic. The first Pride that we had to have it in a park that was kind of an obscure park behind the way.
Yeah.
And we couldn't have any rainbow flags at it. We just had some balloons out front so people would know where to turn in to go into the park. So it just looked like your general run-of-the-mill family gathering or office picnic type of thing.
Yeah.
Because the Swanberg Gay Lesbian Association felt that if it had a rainbow flag there, then nobody would show up because they were too afraid to be labeled as gay.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we couldn't even put a rainbow flag on the Gay and Lesbian Community Center because, well, people would be afraid to come in there.
Sure.
Now there are rainbow flags up and down Phillips Avenue, especially during Gay Pride Week.
Wow.
Which is way cool. And Gay Pride is now in Terrace Park, and it's big, and there's a stage show.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's.
You know, I can say that even though I don't identify as that myself, being straight, or as you said, forward, right?
Yeah.
Straight's overrated. I can attest to at least saying that is probably an amazing leap forward. I know that I have plenty of friends who do identify in those in that realm, and to know that there is a place for that, know that they have a place where they can be seen and be comfortable and be accepted in any facet in that it's amazing to even say that. It's amazing to even know that we've come this far.
Yeah.
And, civil rights in general, only being Black American, being multicultural, but being mainly identified as a Black American, to understand where my heritage and my history came from. We are always fighting to be able to identify ourselves and be equal as to who we are in any way, right?
Right.
So that is kind of cool to see that we've actually come that far. One of my favorite questions to ask, and even more so insightful, I believe, is when did the pursuit of artistry as life's work rear? When do you remember what inspired you?
As far as
your
quitting my job and getting a studio.
as far as striving to make art your expression, your bread and butter, make your moment of, when was it that, when did it become a thing for you? And do you remember what it was that inspired you to get that, to do that, to pursue that dream?
I've always enjoyed doing art and being creative. I've not very often had the space or the place for that.
Right.
So a couple of years ago, I was working overnight at a gas station, and I took a friend of mine out to Denver so that she could
Never forget that one.
so that she could visit her partner who lived out there.
Yeah.
And she didn't have transportation or anything, so she could gas my car and take her out there. And when the brakes went out on the vehicle, and I ended up staying a couple extra days out there farther than I had planned, when I got back, I had lost my job, which was fun.
Yeah.
And it happened to be right before I was leaving for a 2-week vacation, which worked out perfectly because I had still 4 weeks of pay coming, because that weekend was payday, and then so I had 2 weeks after that was payday also. So going to the gathering and talking to people there, what the fuck am I going to do when I get back? Had some really good conversations about what I had been doing with my life, what I love doing, where I felt that I could do something that would make a difference. When I got back, the first phone call I made was to the executive director of the South Dakota Peace and Justice Center, and she says, "Yeah, come hang out." So I spent the next 1.5 years until the South Dakota Peace and Justice Center closed, putting together peace festivals and fundraisers, and all of that kind of stuff, and being able to use my art to do that. And that really kind of made me realize that, life is too short to be working overnight at a gas station full time and not doing what I love to do.
Right.
So I took a year off that eventually led into about 1.5 years from doing the gas station thing, and joined the bakery and started trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do. And came up with a couple of things that I want to do. One of them is that I want to focus more on my artwork. I would love to sell some of my artwork, but it's more than that. It's it's something that I need to do.
Yeah.
My art basically centers around comforting the agitated and agitating the comfortable.
Like that.
So I do. I've done like large water protector puppets to draw attention to the fact that we're polluting our waters.
Right.
I've done things that are pretty to hopefully go in somebody's house to help calm their spirits when they're agitated. They can look at it and it's something beautiful.
Right.
I've done The Art of Peace was a annual art show that we did shortly after we started bombing in Baghdad the first time.
Yeah.
That ran for about I think it was 8 to 10 years. That was bringing attention to the war, bringing attention to what we needed to do for peace.
Right.
I've done dialogues from the heart, which I would love to continue. We've done one so far on the this last election cycle.
Yeah.
And that was basically getting artists from two separate sides of, or two diverse sides of an issue.
Yeah.
That is a difficult issue, such as the last election cycle, and putting their art together in one exhibition in the room.
Right.
And it was visual art plus poetry, so spoken word, and finding that connection by looking at somebody else's art that doesn't necessarily agree with your viewpoint on how things is,
yeah.
But to be able to use art to cross that bridge a little bit, to start discussions and start communication between two divergent sides of an issue.
Right.
And just kind of sitting and thinking about, I've done this, and I've done that, and I've done that, and all of that surrounds around art. What the hell am I doing working in a gas station? And then the other thing that I started putting together was a program called First Chance Blocks. And it's a re-entry program for guys that are getting out of the penitentiary. That deals with supportive, holistic, integrated transition, otherwise known as the SHIT program. Because if you take your shit, and you dig your shit, and you work your shit into the ground, it turns into fertilizer, and something beautiful will grow out of that. Is the concept. So
makes sense.
There's that, yeah. So right now, as I've got a few months, I really wanted to push the art and focus on the art and getting that jump started, so that later on in the year, when I work to kick off the First Chance Full House program, I'll have life solidified a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to start two things at once. And then, so right now I'm focusing on the art side. Later this year, after August, I'll be focusing on the First Chance Full House side and getting that up and running, hopefully before the end of the year.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, that is beautiful. I know we had talked about that before, and I was curious, and you'd explain that to me, and I think that's something that we don't see. We don't see, people trying to help those who are coming out of the pen, coming out of, prison, to reacclimate themselves into the world that has, for lack of a better word, passed them by. I mean, they're living in a confined space. They're living institutionalized. And, coming from that, you have movies like Shawshank Redemption that, express these things. You have people who have written about what the life is like in prison. And, we know that the rates of returned prisoners, this consistency of people who keep coming back to it because there's no foundation for them to come to terms with or leave what brought them there in the first place.
Yeah.
So to know that there are people out there who are looking to establish and rekindle and reestablish these people for, getting them back and acclimating to the world is beautiful. I think that's a great thing. Ideally, how do you want your art to be perceived? I know that you said, you want to, give comfort for the people who have been shaken and shake those who are in a comfort, but is there a theme to your work? Is there a way that you want your work to be seen?
That's a hard one because my work is so very eclectic.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. As far as my photography goes, I take pictures of odd things that interest me.
Yeah.
Your cables. I've been known to. I was staying in a hotel one time, and I was up on one of the upper floors.
Yeah.
And there was construction going on in the building. They were building the building next door to it. You'd look down and you'd see the cable, and the designs that they were just like thrown out to to run the equipment or to lay cable or whatever they were going to do with it. But the designs of it were just like the repetitiveness of it was very interesting. So I take pictures of that.
Right.
Just anything that's just kind of weird, that catches my eye, that even like textures and stuff. I'll take photos of that. I like taking photographs of like through windows with the reflection in the window. Very raw kind of photography. I also enjoy taking pictures with flowers, generally like really up close flowers. Georgia O'Keeffe is one of my favorite painters, and I love the large flowers, the page full of flowers that she's known for. I remember as a child before I had any exposure to any kind of art stuff, I would paint giant poinsettias on notebook paper as a kid with crayons. I take photographs of, I've got a series called The Invisibles, where I take, for lack of a better term, portraits of people, but you generally can't see their faces.
Right.
But it's people that affect our lives for the better, that we don't ever see or acknowledge, especially if we are in the upper class
Sure.
of society. That would be the dishwashers at a restaurant, or the hotel maids, the street washers, the guys that go around at 4 o'clock in the morning and water all the plants that are hanging downtown in Chicago or whatever. So there's a wide range of photography that I do. As far as my painting, I paint not so much I paint emotions, I paint feelings. I wouldn't really call my stuff abstract because it's not really abstract. Although I have done some abstract painting. I also paint what it is to see the world with new eyes.
Sure. Yeah.
There seems to be an abundance of eyeballs in my paintings sometimes. And it's about, seeing the beauty in life, seeing the community and the connection that everything has.
Right. Yeah, no, fair enough. In your artwork, what is it that you are trying to say? If anything.
Yeah. Again, that depends on the specific piece. I've done on-site installation type pieces for the South Dakota Peace and Justice Center that focused on the number of people killed in the war in Iraq.
Right.
To draw awareness to that. Just, this is enough, it must stop.
Yeah.
I've done pieces on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the atomic bombs that we released to draw attention to nuclear disarmament. Like I said earlier, I've done Papatista style water goddess to draw attention to how we're treating our water.
Yeah.
and that's more of my, I call it my social justice artwork.
Right.
And that's to agitate people, to get people thinking about, what are we doing with our water? What are we putting in our water?
Right.
To get them uncomfortable about war, to make it stop.
Yeah.
To get them thinking about the causes of it, how we can, with a few extra diplomatic words, maybe this wouldn't have had to happen, type of thing.
Right. Right.
My other artwork is more comforting to people, grievance.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there.
Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah. Yeah. So, comforting the agitating the comforting.
Nice.
I have lots of little mini themes, but that seems to be the general theme that runs through everything.
Right.
So.
Well, I'd like to end mine in one of my heroes, James Lipton, and in the same questionnaire that he would end his hero, Mr. Bernard Deveau. What is your favorite word?
My favorite word?
Favorite word.
I think it would have to be family.
What is your least favorite word?
Hate.
What turns you on?
Like.
What turns you off?
Prejudiced.
What sound or noise do you love?
Babies.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Probably crying child.
What is your favorite curse word?
My favorite curse word? As much as I say it, probably fuck.
What profession, other than the one you are doing currently, would you like to attempt?
I think forest ranger would be really cool. I like camping.
I understand.
Get paid for living in the forest? Hey.
That would be the life.
Right?
That would be. What profession would you never want to try?
Working on the kill floor of an animal. Working on the kill floor of a meat packing plant.
Slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
And finally, what is it you would like to see on the other side when you light and this world is finally extinguished.
Well, we're all stardust. What would I like to see? I'm not sure. It's for me, it's an exciting journey. And I feel that when I die, that doesn't mean that my journey is over.
No.
It just means that I'm shedding the skin.
So then what would you like to see?
Yeah. The universe.
Well, Sam, I appreciate your time and I appreciate you being here. This is the first interview of many to which I hope to have with amazing artists such as yourself. And I do look forward to seeing a lot more of your artwork and being present in the insanity and yet the amazing creations that I have seen come from things that you put together. I can say that I have been present for a few of them that have inspired the hell out of me. And I can only imagine the things to come. So I am definitely grateful to be present for this. So thank you again. Thank you very much. As always. We will have more to come to you guys and more to show, and as it gets better it will be completely raw and unadulterated except for, I guess, editing, cutting, whatever. But again, we have Sam Lopez. This time we have to make sure the name is right. One of many who I have been grateful to be around and who has inspired me. And again, this being my presentation for what I call WWSV, Women with Strong Vaginas, I think it's appropriate not to play or tease on a subject that does not get laid or is not spotlighted enough, and I feel that it is necessary that we have these conversations because, again, 88 Industries, I'm not the only one who is about engaging perspectives, as we have seen. Artistry is about that. What we do through art is about engaging other people's perspectives, and the collective as we are is needing to be heard, and if at any time now has been far more integral for that, and I think that at this point we are at a turning point. So I hope that you guys will join me. I hope everyone will join me in continuing this journey with me, and again, I am grateful to be in this present. So thank you guys for participating, watching, if you've even been this far. This was one of my longest ones, but it is a beautiful thing, so take care.